Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Danville Regular School Board meeting. This day, November the 15th, 2021, 6 p.m. So item 2 on our agenda, we need to have the approval of the meeting agenda as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting agenda as presented for 11/15/2021.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the approval of the agenda as submitted, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing there are none, the motion carries. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to go to item number 3, which is presentations. This is an opportunity for the board and superintendent and recognitions. And so, board members, if you all have comments you'd like to make about what's going on, or please do. The floor is yours. Anybody?
No, I just watched this new edition.
That's what I'm
It
saying.
is amazing, but other than that, no.
Okay. Well, you know, Mr. Gover is here, and I did not know that he had such a decorating touch.
Well,
But
I involved
now he did admit.
Donda and Olivia, who's not here tonight, so they get as much credit as me, if not more.
He did admit that he was just here. So anyways, but it does look good. We had a fellow, Brad Hughes, that spoke to us at our last meeting and brought up that maybe we needed to put pictures of kids and so forth up here. And so here they appear. So I'm going to send a picture to him, and so that we followed his advice. I'd like just to say that it's always busy during school, no matter when it is, and our staff and administrators and all of our teachers and everyone involved just does a great job for us and for our kids. It's really not for us, it's for our kids. And we just greatly appreciate all the efforts. The football team finished out, tough game, but what a great season. And we have to commend the kids and the coaches for willingness to get in there and just get the job done. And football's tough. And they met the challenge, and so what a great season for them. Does anybody else have any comments? Okay, well, let's go on and move on to Superintendent Comments. Dr. Thomas?
Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, call your attention to a few items. First of all, I'd like to talk about Olivia Moore, the new senior media manager. And I think that she's been really instrumental over the last week since she's come on board in communicating what's going on in our district. And so I really want to encourage everyone, if you've not signed up yet for the newsletter, please take the time to sign up so that you'll actually receive that newsletter as soon as it goes live. She's planning on, and that usually will go out on Wednesday afternoons. And so in addition to the newsletter, Olivia's had a couple of press releases already. So we've got the interim principal at Bate Middle, Ms. Barnes, and that was released. I saw that in the paper as well. And she also had a release on our work session last week. So very pleased with all of the communication that she's been able to do in such a positive way in that first week that she's been on board. And I say as well that we're excited, but I pass this on as a piece of information and guidance, that Wednesday our front parking lot will be paved. So we're getting new pavement on the front parking lot this Wednesday. It's a much needed project, and it's really going to add to the safety of everyone arriving to central office, especially those coming in to pay their property taxes. So needless to say, Wednesday will be a little bit different this week. And we've already had our teams working to make arrangements so that people can safely arrive and walk into our building, pay taxes and so forth on Wednesday. That should be the only day that's impacted. And one other piece that I wanted the board to know about as a potential, it's not there yet, but we're excited that Danville High School is currently considering moving ahead with the University of Kentucky's Next Generation Scholars Dual Credit Network. And while we're in the beginning stages of this network will allow us to offer a menu of UK dual credit courses to our juniors and seniors, and will also allow our teachers to cultivate those next-gen practices with our faculty so they can support our students. I think this is particularly exciting because if we're accepted into the partnership, basically we facilitate having a UK professor actually teaching our students virtually, while one of our teachers would be working with that professor, and that teacher would work through the logistics of grading and assignments and so forth like that. Currently, there are 14 districts participating and high schools participating. Frankfort Independent, Somerset Independent, Bardstown Independent, the STEAM Academy in Fayette, and a few county schools as well. There's a lot more to be considered on this, but we look forward to proceeding cautiously so that perhaps by the fall of 2022, our juniors and seniors can get into that Gen Ed curriculum at the University of Kentucky. And if they continue on to University of Kentucky, it's seamless, or if they go to any of our other state universities in particular, that credit will transfer in with them, dual credit. And I think that if we get to that point of being accepted and moving forward, obviously that's something we want to really broadcast out and get the news out in regards to that. Lastly, I'll brag on Ms. Satterley and the principals who've been working on the CSIP and the CDIP. We expect that to come in front of you, but I really appreciate them diligently using all the data that's available, much of what was shared with you last week. So happy Thanksgiving next week to everyone, and that concludes my report.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Let's move on to item C, which is recognition. Mr. Ball is going to be up there along with the students and principals. So hopefully we'll have some camera-ready shots. So, Mr. Murray, Dr. Murray, will you be first? Dr. Murray's with the course principal at BATE.
All right, so I'm recognizing two of our students this go around, and both of these students they excel in a lot of different areas in our school building. They're great students. They really represent what it means to be a BATE Bulldog. But the thing that they're here to be recognized for is the poems that they wrote for the Frank X. Walker Poetry Contest. So the first one that I wanted to recognize is Kainoa Kunomitsu. Kainoa is a new student with us. He's a sixth grader with us this year, and Kainoa has started with us in summer school and has just been a joy for us to have in classes. Our teachers all rave about him and everything that he does in the classroom. And if you haven't had a chance, if you heard his poem when he read it at the Frank X. Walker Festival, it's an excellent poem titled "Where I'm From." And I have done I've read a lot of these different poems that have been introduced in these contests, and this year's crop of poems that our students wrote were amazing. And Kainoa won the contest, so we're here to recognize him. Take a picture with Mr.
Come around here.
Congratulations, young man.
All right, and then our next recognition is for Ellie Pennington. Ellie wrote a poem called "Equality." Once again, a very, very great poem, and I can't tell you how impressed I am with the poems that were entered in this contest. Ellie, again, is she's a seventh grader at BATE, and Ellie is a member of our tech team, helps Mr. Smith put computers together that fall apart for various different reasons. She's a big asset to our school for a lot of different reasons, and then is a great poet. So, Ellie Pennington. That's it. That's all for BATE.
Okay, Mr. Lumen?
Yes,
There he is. He's in the back. You always need to make a grand entrance.
Well, thank you for this opportunity to honor one of our greatest resources at Campbell High School. Ms. Dora Blank is the recipient of our monthly award for this month. Just to run down the list, and I just started jotting things down. I was like, goodness gracious, I'm going to run out of the room here. Starting with, she is our science teacher. She is one of the best science teachers. She is our department chair. She spends countless hours and time dedicated to not only her subject, but also everyone else's. And if anyone misses, she's up there to make sure someone's ready to cover that class. And that class goes on. It's not just another, hey, we're just going to have a free day. It is actually going to be some learning with Miss Blank around. The first time I met her, she was a part of the Summer School Leadership Academy. One of the things that we use this summer to kind of recoup learning and to engage our students into reimagining how the opening or reopening of Danville High School will look when we come back from being quarantined and away from school. So now she designed a whole bunch of ideas for how to make the hallways look, how to celebrate students, how to take pictures, and how we're going to make Danville High School a fun place to be again. She's also the science department chair. I kind of already said that. Culture and climate committee chair. She's the one, if you saw us at the football game when we had the teacher appreciation night, she put that on. That was her baby. She came up with all these ideas of how we were going to celebrate teachers and recognize and just really make a positive culture and climate at Danville High School. She's also a part of the school improvement team, which meets every Monday. So I'm telling you, she's tough. She's been there all morning, and then she stayed all afternoon to listen to me talk about how we're going to continually improve Danville High School. And she has a wealth of input that we value in that time. And so she's always there to help improve. She's committed to our school improvement. She is one of our first teachers that, thank you to Mr. Gover, has an interactive flat camera. And so she's taken that innovative piece of equipment and implemented it into her classroom routines. So our teachers are getting 21st century activities. She also is always researching. So she's come up with this new quiz activity that she does called Gim Kits. And the kids love that. So she's always doing innovative and new things. This month is Random Act of Kindness Month. She has developed a way for us to identify students that are doing random act of kindness and staff as well. And we recognize them on the announcements, and our goal is for 400, random acts of kindness, and we're vastly approaching that as the month goes on. She came up with the idea for the staff and student of the week, and we not only do a certified staff, but we also do a classified staff. And I don't know who designed the turnover chain, but we have a big chain we put around them, and we celebrate them and make a big deal about it. And then the students also get their pictures. So if you've ever looked at our web page, if you go through our social media site, we're always celebrating 4 students and 2 staff members every week. So that's another one of her great ideas. And pretty soon, we're this close, aren't we? You'll see pictures and frames all around, you all stole our idea, but all around the high school of celebrating our students, and she has worked really countless hours. So we're using our technology in Mr. Wetmore's class to print the pictures, and we've come up with the frames so that we can celebrate our students. So if you would, I'm sorry, I went a little long, but she does so many things. I wanted you all to know how amazing Ms. Char Murray is.
Come on back now. You
Can't leave.
She's a star. I can't get next to her. She shines so bright.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mrs. Farmer from Hogsett.
Hi, I'm also here recognizing one of the Frank X. Walker poem writers and winners, so Willie Huska. She is a first grader at Hogsett, and she won the award for the whole, Boyle County for kindergarten through 2nd grade poems. So, and it's appropriate that she's wearing the color pink because her poem is called Pink. She said I can read it if you don't mind. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So it's called Pink by Willie Huska. Pink is like the sound of girls yelling. Pink is like the smell of perfume. Pink is like the taste of bubblegum. Pink is like the feel of raspberries.
Very good.
think that's it on the recognitions. I'd like to say I was able to attend the conclusion of the Walker Festival at Gravely Hall, and it was impressive. Our young people did what they did. I mean, not only did they write it, they had to convey it, they had to communicate it on that big stage. And it was just, it got to me, because I thought, how else are these kids going to learn to communicate and do it in such a beautiful way? And I know Wade was there, I don't know who all was there, but it was a very unique event. And we're just honored that Frank is one of our graduates, and we've carried on this festival, and all those, and Ms. Dewey and all those that have worked on it. But to the kids, wow, you guys are fantastic. Thank you.
And Mr. Becker, they're going to be publishing their own, there's going to be an actual book published that we will be able to sell of all of the poems. So they're going to be published authors.
Wow, now that's wonderful. So, I mean, did you all know that you're going to be published?
Awesome.
Fantastic. People might be asking for your autographs. So, which is great. Mrs. Bruce Terry, thank you so much for letting me know that.
Yeah.
That'll be
And
great.
it's Frank's publishing house that's publishing.
And Frank's is, okay,
Wow.
good.
That's really an honor too.
Yeah.
It really is. So, item 3D, which sounds funny, is we have a guest here from the Kentucky School Board Association, Mr. Eric Kennedy. You all can go if you want.
Thank you.
We thank you all.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Congratulations again.
Eric is, like I said, is with the School Board Association. He's the advocate concerning issues. He talks to our legislature, legislative folks. If things need to be tweaked or twisted in the favor of schools and our kids, he's the guy that's on top of it. He's our advocate. I mean, it's phenomenal the work that he does. So we have some things coming up. House bill, and I guess Senate bill too, 563, which if you're not aware, it's been in the paper lately. There was two components. One component being that if a child decided to go to a religious school, that the money would follow the child. Well, the courts said that that's a no-no, and I don't know if it's going to get challenged, but that, as of now, is not going to happen. But the other part of the bill, and Eric will go through this for us, basically has opened up a gate. So if Eric's child wants to attend Danville schools, even if they live in Frankfurt, they can do that, and the money will follow. So there are no more borders, and so it just doesn't affect independence. It really affects all of our school districts, but my heart, as Eric knows, is with the independents. Slowly but surely, our numbers are dwindling, and I do think that this is something that is not going to help us. So I know this bill could change, and hopefully for the better, or it just goes away. But anyways, Eric, if you would, I know this is of great interest to the board.
Well, just before we start, one clarification. Mr. Becker said our numbers are dwindling.
No.
He means independent school districts.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Wade.
I just want to clear that up.
Independent schools, yes.
So that was the point.
The number of independent school districts has fallen over the years.
Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you all. I won't take a lot of your time. What I passed out in front of you, thank you for the invite, of course, to come down and meet with you all. This is just a very small part. As you can see, this is the first few pages, it's about the first 11 pages of what was a 38-page bill. This was House Bill 563 from the last legislative session in Frankfurt. I cut off all of the pages that came after this because that is the entire part we are not going to talk about here. That is the part that was the income tax credit, the scholarship tax credits piece of it that, as of this moment, has been prevented from being implemented, and it's still tied up in courts. It will go up to our state Supreme Court. So all of that I totally cut out so that we are not distracted by that piece at all, which was, the entire bill was controversial among people, but that especially was. So the part that I passed out that's in front of you is the first 4 sections of the bill. This is the part that was all about non-resident enrollment. So the issue of non-resident enrollment in Kentucky among school districts is not new at all. In fact, it is one of the very few things that typically had a difference of opinion among types of school districts. Very often some change that gets proposed in state law will affect all districts kind of a similar way. This was one thing where independent school boards and county school boards sometimes had a difference of opinion on it, but it wasn't always on that line. Sometimes 2 counties would argue about it, sometimes independents, but generally that's what we saw. So I wanted to focus that when we talk about this topic of non-resident student enrollment, a student enrolling and attending school in a district where they are not physically residents, that so many folks, especially if you've been on the board for a long time or brand new, you tend to jump right to kind of what we say jump in the weeds, or you jump right into some detailed situation about what you're used to. Just for example, earlier today I had a superintendent call me and said, during the December board meeting, forever and ever, we have always had an item on the agenda where we sign the agreement with the independent district that's in our county. Do we need to have that on the agenda? I'm getting ready for the next month's meeting. Do we need to have a contract about enrollment the way we have always had because of this? So I was kind of talking to them on the phone, the same thing I'm going to talk to you here. The answer to that question, frankly, at the moment is no. School boards at this moment do not need to have a contract like they're used to having with other districts about counting students that are not residents for enrollment for the school year beginning July 1, 2022, or for next school year. As I get to it in a moment, as Steve said, that could change slightly when they come back into a legislative session starting in January. But backing up a little, we're going to look at what's in front of us. I'll kind of go through the bill and what it did, and then talk about what I think might come next. So if you're not used to reading state legislation, what we see here, I kind of highlighted Section 1 of the bill. It says KRS 157.350 is amended to read as follows. This is one section of state law. When you start looking at that, anything that I've highlighted most of it, anything that's in italics and bold and underlined is new words that they are putting into the statute. And anything that they are removing and taking out is put in brackets and struck through. And so by that way, you can look at this and see what it looked like before they changed it and how they are changing it, how it would read with the new words. So right there at the top of page 1, this section of state law, KRS 157.350, the purpose of that section of law is sort of the list of things that a district has to do in order to be eligible for SEEK funding kind of at all. That's the purpose of it. It's not really a statute that's talking about where kids go to school or residency. That one numbered section of statute's not talking about who can and cannot go to school. So that's not where we see things like the minimum age to go into school or kind of the oldest someone can be and still go to high school. All of these things we're listed here, like paragraph 1, paragraph 2 as you go down, these are the things that every school district in Kentucky has to do to participate in SEEK funding, which of course all of you do. So that's very important to remember when we talk about what the bill changed. It didn't really change anything about who you can let come into your district and be enrolled and attend school here in terms of where they live. It really changed who the state will give you money for. And so before the change, when you read down there, kind of paragraph 4, it's been this way for many years. The statute said, so in other words, each district that meets the following requirements shall be eligible to share in the distribution of funds from SEEK, the state money. And then like paragraph 4 would say, if you include no non-resident pupils in your average daily attendance, except, and it used to just go in and say pupils listed under a written agreement with the district of the pupil's legal residence. That's what it used to say and it went on. So what that really meant was, up until this changed, you could allow non-residents to come and enroll and attend schools in Danville, but you could not count them in your ADA report that you send up to Frankfurt that you get SEEK money for unless you had an agreement with the district where they actually were a resident. And those two boards negotiated that and said, yes, we will allow you. So let's just say if they lived outside of the district limits here in Boyle County. So Boyle County School Board and you would negotiate an agreement, and it would be like the Boyle County School Board saying, we will let you count this kid that lives in our district in your ADA. You can put them on your list, and then you will get the state money for them, the same as if they lived there. That's really the purpose of what this law is doing. And as you can, when you read on, it can say they have to be listed in an agreement. If two districts can't come to an agreement, here's how you can appeal it and go to Frankfurt and so on. So what they did there was they kind of turned off that entire provision of law effective July 1, 2022 by putting these words in here where it says, until July 1, 2022. Then it went on and basically said the way it worked, it's going to keep working that way. So for the school year we're in right now, the law hasn't changed yet. When you turn to the next page, page 2 at like line 10, there's kind of two sentences there that are new words that fit into the law. That's where something is changing. It says beginning July 1, 2022, those non-resident pupils admitted pursuant to your district non-resident pupil policy enacted under this different part of the bill. So what that really means is on July 1, 2022, which is the first day of the next school year, at that point, there again, this entire statute is only talking about who you can count in your average daily attendance and who the state will give you money for and seek. It's saying from then on, you can have non-residents enroll and attend school here, and you can count them in your every day's attendance and turn them in for the state seek money, even if they are not listed in a contract you have with another board. So in other words, you no longer will need to have a contract about the non-enrollment, non-resident issue in order to count them for attendance and to get state funding for them, the way you always have. It is making a key shift there. It's not talking about you can or cannot have non-residents or any of that. It's really talking about who the state will give you money for. And so it basically says starting July 1 under your policy under Section 2. Section 2 of the Act is there starting where I've highlighted at the bottom of page 2. This is kind of one paragraph. It's actually not that long or complicated. It's one paragraph of all new words they put into the law. And so it talks about what you and every other school board, not just Independence, but every school board in Kentucky will have to put in your new policy that you will have to adopt by July 1, governing the whole issue of non-residents, if you accept them for enrollment, how you do that, how that will work in your district, in order to count those non-residents that you've enrolled for state funding. So when you look at what that is, what will your policy look like? So I'll just read it quickly, it's short. By July 1, 2022, a Board of Education shall adopt, that means you have to, every district will adopt some kind of policy. You shall adopt a non-resident pupil policy to govern the terms under which the district shall allow enrollment of non-resident pupils. Period. So in other words, sometime between now and July 1, you and every other board will adopt some policy on this topic. Every board already has a policy that's called basically like non-resident enrollment. That policy exists. Everybody's going to be making changes to that. As this was explained, this does not require any district to allow non-resident students to enroll. Your policy could in fact be that you do not accept non-residents for enrollment. Some districts, I believe some districts don't now, a few. Some school boards do not want to, for whatever reason. Everyone is unique. And so it's possible that a school board could say our policy is that we do not accept non-residents for enrollment, period. But moving on, that's why it says upon allowing. The next sentence is upon allowing non-resident pupil enrollment. So if your policy says yes, we do, the policy shall allow non-resident children to be eligible to enroll in any public school located within the district. That will be more, that'll be a bigger deal in larger districts that have a lot of schools, like, someone like Fayette, Jefferson County, where there's hundreds of schools, dozens and dozens of elementary schools. That'll be more complicated in some of those areas. Goes on to say, the policy shall not discriminate between non-resident pupils, but may recognize enrollment capacity as determined by the local school district. That sentence is probably the most, we're going to have some clarification on that sentence more than any other part of this, what exactly that means. And so it definitely means, and everybody agrees, that each local board will determine your enrollment capacity. It does not mean that if you have room for 10 kids and 200 kids show up from out of district want to go, that you have to find room for them. So you will determine your own capacity for how many non-residents that you will allow to enroll. But exactly what the word capacity means is not exactly clear. Some people read that and immediately jump to the idea of just your building capacity, like what the fire marshal says, how many chairs you have in the building. But a bigger sense of that word could mean, well, how many teachers do you have at each grade level? How much capacity do you really have to educate and serve students at different levels and different numbers? For example, some districts that have declining enrollment, they have a whole wing of a building that's vacant with chairs. So they have room for hundreds of people to come in and sit down. They don't have any money to pay for teachers or any teachers to pay for those kids. So you get why there's a bigger meaning of what that word capacity might mean. And then the word discriminate. The phrase, the policy shall not discriminate between non-resident pupils. So it is not really clear what the legislators who wrote this and passed this last session intended that to mean. The first most obvious thing that in school law that we always think of are the legally protected groups of students. Things like national origin, religion, sex and race, and so forth, special education status. So I think it definitely, clearly would mean that much. I don't think you could have a policy that would say we only accept for enrollment non-resident girls, not non-resident boys. But it could mean more than that. As you all well know, many school boards in Kentucky now, in how they accept non-residents for enrollment, take it year by year, and they take it like you have to apply, and some even you interview. Each individual student may or may not be accepted. Many boards have terms such as you have to keep a certain GPA to stay in enrollment after each year, year over year. Some have, you have to keep a certain clean discipline record. Some say you have to have a certain attendance record because funding is based on attendance, obviously. So a lot of board policies and procedures have varied terms like that. Well, anything like that can be a form of discriminating or choosing between even individual students if you come in or remain in. And so in a bigger sense of the word discriminate, there is some conversation happening among the legislators and among different school leaders in Frankfurt of what they really intended. And this is one of the things that is most likely to be clarified next session. They may go into this law and clarify exactly what that means. Will they, beginning July 1, when all the boards, you and all the others adopt your policy, will they allow you to say that you can take into account things like GPA at your prior school, attendance record, and so forth? Or can you not take anything like that into account? Are you simply looking at your capacity number, and every kid that comes in up to that limit you have to let in? That is something that is not clear now, probably will be clarified in legislation in the session that starts in January. So really quickly then, there's not much left. The policy you adopt and any subsequent changes that you would adopt have to be filed just to kind of be put on record with the State Department of Ed. They're not subject to approval by them, but they just want the Department of Ed wants to have a record of everybody's policies as questions come up. That is really it. That one key paragraph, basically, and the policy you adopt under those terms would take the place of how you and all the other boards negotiate sometimes lengthy written contracts about how many non-residents you can take in and count, what that entire process looks like. The whole thing you're used to of negotiating contracts and what goes in contracts will instead be in your own policy so long as it meets these parameters. And the key thing there, again, we're still talking mostly about who the state will let you count and get money for. The key thing there, and the whole movement behind this bill, from some district leaders and some schools specifically, was all about cases where all across Kentucky most boards have agreements. It's not a big fight. It's not controversial, really. Many districts have any and all contracts where any number of kids can go and cross boundaries. In some places that is not the case. In some places there can be protracted, even legal fights about it, big arguments. Some boards just cannot come to any agreement and there's no contract. So a non-resident can cross that boundary, but where they go, you can't count them in attendance to get state funding. The most common issue comes up with the cap on how many a district where they live will let the enrolling district, how many students they'll let you count and get funding for. And especially in places in Kentucky where that was a long-standing issue, was the movement behind this. Because now, let's say well, I won't even use yours for example. I don't want anyone in this community to think I'm picking on you. But just for the sake of where I'm from, in Paducah and McCracken County, just as an example, in the Paducah Independent School District, let's say that 100 kids from McCracken County wanted to go into attend school in Paducah. 100 kids. But and let's just say no kids wanted to do in reverse and go from the city out to the county to keep it simple. And so if they had an agreement where those two school boards said, we will only let you count 50 kids that live in our district for your attendance and your funding, the Paducah City School Board would say, well, if we just controlled this ourselves, if we didn't have to have your agreement, all 100 kids could come in, we have room for them, we would take them all and count them in attendance and get state funding for them. That is the situation where this bill will make the most impact. Because in that hypothetical situation, the McCracken County School Board would no longer have anything to do with how many of their resident kids went in to attend in the city schools and how many they counted they got state funding for at all. There would not be any need for that agreement or contract. The city schools would just adopt their policy that says, well, our capacity is 100 and all these kids can come in and we'll count them in our ADA report and get funding for them. That's the major change, which is, it is such a shift in how we've done this forever that a lot of folks, school people, school board members, supers, and others, we're having a hard time even wrapping our heads around just how different that will be, that you adopt a policy all on your own, really without a need for any agreement with anyone else. But as I said, there are still, like I said, the word capacity, the word discrimination, there are still some things that aren't exactly clear in how that will work. This session, they definitely will be having discussion in Frankfurt. They probably will see legislation to clarify one way or the other a couple of those terms. And since the last session ended and since this bill passed, but hasn't really taken effect yet, a group of mostly superintendents from districts on both sides of this issue have had several meetings together in Frankfurt. Those discussions have been facilitated by the KASA group. As I said, some of them, it was folks on both sides of this non-resident issue, but there was agreement on at least some of those key things, that everyone would be better off if we had clarification on exactly what these meant, one way or the other, before all the boards have to adopt this policy. So I think that they probably will pass legislation to clarify that next session. The only other thing I'll mention is on page 8 of what I handed you, there was one other provision about athletics. Because every once in a while, athletics has something to do with this. I don't really know what. I was not an athlete. I was on the academic team. I don't really understand what this had to do with it. Apparently, something about athletics and crossing boundaries is like a big deal. I don't really get it. But during the legislative debate on this issue, a lot of folks said this, if you do this, it will just open the floodgates to a lot of stuff with athletic recruiting and moving around that is going to cause trouble. The legislators put this sentence you see there on paragraph H in the middle of page 8 that tried to just put that out of the argument about the bill to basically say, okay, when this takes effect, any student who transfers from a district where they live into a district where they are the non-resident, you are just ineligible for athletics for 1 calendar year from that day, whatever that is. So for sort of basically saying it won't do much good to recruit because they won't be able to play for 1 year. That kind of takes us off the table. It shows this isn't about athletics. That actually, in these discussions of these superintendents since then, there's been some growing consensus that this approach just causes even more problems than doing nothing. There's been a consensus that the KHSAA and their Board of Control and their bylaws handles this whole world of stuff, and that we don't need any legislation to say anything about eligibility, just let KHSAA handle those issues. And so one of the things that this group is going to go to the legislators with, in addition to what exactly does capacity mean, what exactly does discrimination mean for this purpose, is going to be to ask them to just take this sentence out and just kind of let all the existing rules handle this. I don't know if that will pass. I don't know if the legislators may not have interest in talking about it at all. We might just have what we see here on July 1. But regardless, we as KSBA, every school board, except for one, uses our policy service to help you all kind of craft your policies. We are waiting to see what, if anything, changes about this during the session, because our kind of model policy that we pushed out to help you all as a starting place may have to change. But whatever happens, at about the normal time period where you get our big policy update package, and then you customize it in any way that you all as a board might want, that is usually middle of May to about July 1. That'll be right in the time period where this work is happening before that July 1 deadline. And so kind of all as part of that one annual process you're used to, it will probably be, I don't expect them to totally repeal all of this, it'll probably be a discussion of, do you want to accept non-residents? What is your capacity? how do you want that to work for you to adopt a policy under these terms. And so that will happen then, and largely take the place of, basically right about now, you would probably be talking about what your contracts would be with these other boards for next year. Now, the actual details of this, there's a lot more to it once you start thinking in the real world of the ins and outs of this. Especially if they clarify that not discriminating between non-residents means you can't take GPA and attendance into account, for example. Well, that sort of thing, if that's what you all have done for a long time, and you wanted to still do that, and now you know, well, if we won't be able to do that going forward, some boards may not want to take any non-residents anymore. And they may, for the first time, actually go from always having some non-residents to saying, well, now our policy will be we don't want to take any. That will be such a localized decision of the situation in each district that our model policy will probably just sort of be the framework, and every district will really have to customize what that will look like. So that's what that is. And any questions, or that's about all I had.
Any questions? This is an opportunity. Well, the clock is ticking, depending on where all this lands, of
Yeah.
course. And I know this could have been premature to have Eric here at this point, but it was good to be able to know what's been added to the bill and taken out of the bill. And when I've talked to Eric before about this, he said, you know, this really isn't about a county district and an independent district. It's about how those districts are going to handle their business.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say trends probably will stay the same. If your district gets more county kids, they're probably going to continue that. If the independent loses more kids to the county district, that trend will probably stay in there. My biggest fear was any time that you basically say, now we have open borders, you know, I fear that there could be districts that would say, you know, that Pusateri kid is a top honors kid. We'd really love to have them in our district. And not saying that that doesn't go on now, because it could, but it just, and I've talked to other board members with these same concerns, is that it just seems like it could open up Pandora's box. That any kid could be recruited. And that's some of the fears. And I guess that would run both ways.
And that's a good point. One last thing that I neglected to mention was this truly is a statewide bill that changes be looked at. So one other thing that's not clear is if a district has an all-online virtual academy, some have had for many years, especially at the high school level. I mean, there's one I'll just mention in particular, not by name, but there's one school district where the board, a program of that public school district, has been an all virtual online high school academy for many years over in Western Kentucky. Well, what the legislators were thinking of here, most of it was the traditional one kid just across town when that local community goes to a new school in person. They weren't really talking about kids from all over the state of Kentucky, from 170 districts, enrolling in that one all-online program in one district, and they counted for attendance to get the state funding for them. They weren't really talking about that at all. So that's one of the things that we ask in our legislative survey about of when they open this up and try to clarify a few things to help everybody figure this out, should they put some kind of limit on any kind of online or virtual program having a different capacity, or not letting non-residents into those at all, and having this be kind of the more traditional in-person school that we're all used to talking about. That is one thing they might look at. So that's a good point, that it's truly statewide. It's not just the districts that border you or touch you. The superintendent that called me today, he said, you know, we kind of border, it was a county, and they have one independent in their county, and they border like 4 other counties. And they sort of said, we've always had agreements with 3 of them, we don't really have any agreements with 2 of them, and it's all this unique local thing that I'm not from there, so I don't really know the ins and outs. But I was telling them, if they come in and say not discriminating among non-residents, if they mean that one of the things that means is from where you are a resident. You're used to saying we don't have any agreement with 2 places and nobody crosses that boundary, but we have any and all with 3 others. It might be that if you weren't to keep taking any non-residents, then it would be all of them, or from anywhere at all. So many folks legislators, board members and supers, when this was going through, they weren't thinking in that terms at all. They were thinking mostly like this board and this board, these two boards have fought over this will fix it. So now when we step back and think, this will really be just open borders of 171 districts across Kentucky, things may come into play next year that no one has really anticipated.
Can I ask how this will apply to like magnet schools and things like that? We did obviously do have some parameters around who they allow.
So that, I'll get personal for a second, that some folks are saying that that's a big question and obstacle. I don't necessarily think it is, but I think it's just my personal opinion. No court has weighed in on this, obviously, it hasn't really taken effect yet. We don't have any AG opinion on it. But in that one key paragraph where it says, the policy shall allow non-resident children to be eligible to enroll in any public school located in the district. I read that to mean sort of once you're, as a non-resident, once you're into the district, you would have the same eligibility as anyone who lived in the district to go to any school. So if it was a magnet program that had its own application rules and processes, you would still have to apply the same as anyone to get in and be selected for that magnet. Some folks read that and think that what that means is sort of you have more rights to attend even than resident kids that live there, that you're like guaranteed a spot into any school you want to go into, even a magnet. I do not think that's what they intended. They may clarify that to make sure that's not what they intended, but that's another, I don't think that's a big problem, but other people do. So that will get more discussion. If it said, shall allow the non-resident child to attend any school, I think it would be more of a problem to be arguing about, but where it says to be eligible to enroll, I think we could handle that.
Are there any underlying currents that you've heard with this legislation that basically could change the course of charter schools? I mean, if a charter decides to open and they've only been limited to that particular district, now that there's going to be a law that says you can go anywhere you want, to me, this is a backdoor of saying that let's encourage the charter schools to open, and that'll take care of it. This way they don't have to worry about getting their enrollment from a specific, you know, they could go to 4 counties, where now they can't do that. Any talk on that at all?
There's some discussion about charter schools and the legislation around that coming up this session, more about how they would be funded, because there's really no law exactly in place now about how charter schools would be funded. So the biggest discussion happening in Frankfurt among some people is that they might do something to explicitly say, here's how charter schools would receive funding. Not exactly tied to this, however, it is because in the law that they passed in 2017, the charter school law that made them possible, we still don't have one anywhere. A big part of that was that some of the folks that wanted that to pass and wanted charter schools wanted this open enrollment kind of process for them. That was a big part of the argument, and the legislation that passed only allowed that in Kenton and Campbell counties up north. And so you're exactly right that the two things now coming together, it would almost be like the special rule that they were going to have for charter schools only in Kenton and Campbell, where anyone who lived anywhere in those two counties could attend a charter that was located anywhere. There's like 8 or 9 school districts in those two counties. Now, what would have only been true there would be true probably for any charter school in any district in Kentucky. Because now it's like the open borders is anywhere that a school board wants it to have open borders. So.
Well, and I don't know, I just had a discussion with this with a friend of mine, and it just, there's some anxiety that that's really the point of this. It's not so much between the districts, it's so much on how do we get a charter school open now that they could draw from 171 districts if they wanted to. And I don't know how that gets brought up to the legislatures about some of the fear of that, or concern, I should say.
The conversation was mostly coming from that situation of a county school board and an independent school board couldn't agree on any kind of contract. That was where most of the discussion was in terms of that, because that's where it bubbled up from. But it's possible that other people saw this as an opportunity for, once it passed, to use it in those other ways. So be watching for the legislative session on if and when and how any of these 3 or 4 points are clarified. I don't think the whole thing was to be repealed. And then depending on what they finally do, be watching for that policy update of crafting what your policy would be May and June next year. Unless you all quit the board first and retire and resign.
Well, we've had enough of that, so.
Thank you, Eric.
Eric, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate it. I'm gonna applaud you for coming down and safe trip back. Thanks. Okay. Well, I was certainly enlightened on that. If any of y'all want copies of this, Dr. Thomas has one, and we'll make sure that you all get a copy also. Okay. Move to the item number 4, which is the superintendent search timeline. Owens, are you with us?
I am with you. How are we doing tonight?
There you are, up on the screen. To everyone, this is Owen Saylor. He is going to be our lead on the superintendent search from KASA. I've asked Dr. Thomas to make some copies, Owens, as far as the timeline and also the job description. So however you want to start, please do.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be with you all tonight. Let me start by saying thank you for entrusting this important job with KASA. I pledge to do my very best to serve you. I always start these things by saying I work for you. Your best interest is what I'm concerned about, and I'm going to do my very best to find you the best possible superintendent, not only that's available, that is interested in being with you. We are working with a group of aspiring superintendents, and one of the things I say to them is never go for the job, go for the place. Go where you want to be. Be with the school district that wants you and you want them. Because it really is about the perfect marriage. And so I want you to know that up front. I think that the candidate that you want is someone who wants you, not just to be a superintendent. And so with that in mind, I wanted to see if I could share my screen because I'd like to kind of talk you through the timeline a bit. It looks like I can. Great. You guys are way ahead of me. Great. So just a bit about the timeline. You should have a copy of that in front of you. And I want to just speak more specifically to it. I want to thank Mr. Chairman, thank you for your communication with me, helping Steve to try to help us get things a little more defined. I appreciate that. And what I've tried to present for you is a little bit of definition under each of these things, and then an opportunity for the board to speak to me and ask questions if you have them. The recommendation is that you will post this position on December 1st. We post that with posting language, which I hope that you've seen. And we put that on the KD website. Your local folks will have to help us with that. You have the district has a certain number that you have to use to identify the district, and that's what gets it on the KD website. I'll work directly with your folks there to make sure that that happens. Of course, we put it up on KSA, and Elmer can tell you, Dr. Thomas can tell you, we have the broadest administrative network of anybody in the state. So folks around the state are going to know that your job is open and are going to be interested. Our friends at KSBA, we have kind of a reciprocating relationship. We will post our positions on their site, and we allow them to post theirs on ours. That way we work together to try to find, we both have the same goal, find the best superintendents possible. So on December 1st, my recommendation is that you post that position. You're in a really great spot by starting now. You're going to be able to really, you won't have a narrow window, you're going to have a pretty broad window, and so you're going to have plenty of time for folks to consider the position. On the 13th of December, I'd like to join you for an organizational meeting. I'm going to describe the process a little bit more specifically. Each step along the way, we'll define that, and we'll then amend it based on your direction. If there are things that you want to do a little differently, that's where we'll work to amend it at that meeting. We'll finalize the timeline. And one thing I do appreciate, Steve spoke to me about making this flexible. We want everybody, the public, to know that the timeline is something that we work through, that we have as a general guide, but it doesn't mean that that you have to follow that to the T. There's not a law that says that. What we want to do, though, is provide a structure for the search so that folks know what's going on. And then at that meeting on the 13th, I'm going to be asking for the board member that's been appointed by the chair to serve on that screening committee. And that will be something, Steve, you and I will talk about off air. It's your responsibility to make that appointment. I'm suggesting to you that January 10th through the 21st, that's a 2-week period, that you all would conduct your screening committee elections as per the statute. You will need to have one principal. You'll have teachers, you'll have a classified staff member, you'll have 2 teachers, a classified staff member, a parent, and then of course the board member. And all that is spelled out in statute. You've chosen to go to the service level where you all do that screening committee election locally, and then I step in once that election takes place. I will step in and at the organization meeting, and I'll take it from there. On the 24th, I'm asking, and that's a meeting date that's in your schedule. I tried to line these up with standing meetings. We certainly can adjust that based on your recommendations, but I'm suggesting we can work around those if you're willing to do that. On the 24th of January, asking for a closed session. I'd like to report the screening committee results, who's on the committee. We will work on survey questions that you're interested in having on the survey that'll be posted. Really would like the primary reason this is going in the closed session is so that you can talk about the criteria that you would prefer to have in your candidates. By that I mean, what the specific qualities are you looking for in your next superintendent? That's really important because we want to send the screening committee to work with a set of charges that include what your preferred criteria is. You set that criteria, not the screening committee, and we want them to know what that criteria is when they begin that work. I'm recommending that January 28th through February 11th, we would conduct the online survey. You determine who those respondents would be. Will it be just employees? Will it be employees and community? Will it be employees, community, parents? You decide that, and we'll make those decisions again on the 24th, and I'm suggesting that that would be a prime time to run that survey. On February 1st, I'm suggesting that the screening committee have its first organization meeting. We'll be doing that online. And of course, we'll know who those folks are, and I'll run that meeting and get them started. It really is just an outline of the process. They don't do any screening at that point. They're just learning what their role is. Very important, though. It gives them an opportunity to know what to expect as things proceed. On the 14th, happy Valentine's Day. You do have a board meeting. I'm asking for a closed session. We'll make it quick in case you have dinner plans. We'll look at the survey results. You'll be really interested in seeing that. I have a really nice format for reporting that I'll provide for you. We'll begin to develop interview questions, and I'm going to give you an update on where we stand on applications at that point, because the window is open but nearing the closing date. And I'm recommending that you close that application window on February the 28th. Always do that at noon on those days. It provides me enough time to get things settled. One thing we started doing, I think you're really going to appreciate, we can provide you access to applications online so that you can see them at that point. Of course, you'll have confidential access, and you'll be able to see those, so you can do a lot of your perusing. Instead of coming together all at one time to look at them, we can give you access online, and you can do that over a period of days rather than just at one time. I think you'll really appreciate that once you get into it. It makes things a lot easier, moves the process along. Phase 1 then is the application process. Then in phase 2, you get into screening. On March the 3rd, I'm recommending that we have the first screening committee work session. Applications have closed at that point. They will have had access for a week to the applications. and I'm asking them to come to the meeting with some kind of priority alignment of what they've seen, so we can progress the work. Again, instead of bringing them all together and then handing the applications, I like to give folks access so that they can see it. Once we get there, we'll then be able to start pretty quickly right into the kind of the prioritizing of candidates. We'll determine at that time who they are interested in moving on to round 2, which gets into deeper vetting, and that vetting process then begins with phone calls and other contacts. On the 10th of March, we'll do the second screening committee work session. One thing I started doing that's been one of the best things we've ever done, 10-minute Zoom calls with the screening committee for those who are recommended for round 2. It allows the screening committee to hear from them directly, and it really does help narrow down those folks to candidates that they would put into the finalist list. You generally don't end up with more than 5 or 6 on that second round. We'll determine that along the way, and again, based on some direction from you, how many final recommendations would come to the board for finalists. But those really are very effective and very helpful. You use the same questions, and we really do hold them for 10 minutes, and it's very helpful to the screening committee. At that meeting, then, we hope to leave that night with final recommendations of a finalist list for you. And I go into that work always saying that the goal is to present a slate of candidates, any of which would be an acceptable and high-quality candidate to be your next superintendent. Then it comes to you. The screening committee screens. The board selects. And I'm very clear about that all along that process way. Good people sometimes misunderstand when they get in there that they're selecting the next superintendent. They aren't. They are selecting a slate of candidates to bring to you. And then it's up to you as a board to accept that slate. And if you don't, we go back to the drawing board based on your directions. On March the 14th, there's a board meeting. I'm asking for a closed session to review the committee recommendations. They will actually present a letter to you with those recommendations, and then you decide if you accept their recommendation or if you have other finalists that you would like to interview. And you do that because you've had access to the applications along the way and can ask questions. Let's say, for example, you had personal interest in a candidate that didn't show up on that list. You as a board can decide if that candidate makes the cut for finalists. We'll talk a lot about that when we get to the end. It's always good practice, put faith in the screening committee, but if something doesn't fit, or if you have someone else that you're interested in, you have a right to make those decisions when that time comes. And then we'll finalize, at that night, we will finalize your interview schedule. Because what I will do then is begin to contact candidates to ask if they're interested in interviewing for the position. And so that's a really big night. That's kind of, that's the last kind of closed session that you'll have before you get into interviews. Phase 3, enters selection. The week of March 28th, if you want to do a final showcase, and you do that virtually, based on your service level, we could do a final showcase. We can decide how that works. That's up to you. The week of April the 11th is what I'm suggesting that you would start sort of blocking out. It's the week after your spring break, I believe, for interviews. And all those will be in closed session. Of course, you will decide how many candidates that you want to interview, and if you're going to interview 1 or 2 per night, or if you're going to do them individually one night after the other. We'll decide all that as you get closer. That's up to you, and you have plenty of options. And finally, you do have a meeting on April the 18th, and I'm suggesting if everything goes well and it works, you should be able to come together and conduct a formal vote to appoint your superintendent and to approve their contract, or to appoint the superintendent or determine that that's who you want to work with should you come to contract terms. All that language can be worked out, but generally, with the time that you have, you should be able to identify your superintendent and then also work on their contract, which makes it pretty easy and a tight package to deal with on that night. So, before I go any further, does anyone have questions about the timeline? And of course, you all can discuss this further if you like, but I'm open to anything. I'm simply doing that based on the guidelines of your schedule and kind of past history. Any thoughts or comments that you have for me?
Looks good.
No, very definitive.
So Owens, it looks like everybody's in agreement with the draft that's been presented. I am glad that we're gonna post this job on December the 1st. I believe it will get us ahead of the game. I know you and I kind of talked about it. I was a little hesitant, but then the more I thought about it, I thought the 1st was really a good day. So I'm gonna board, this is your opportunity to ask the questions.
Yep.
Straightforward.
Yep.
Oh, can I make a quick comment about the, what is it called?
That's the, just
Oh,
job
the
description.
Yeah, the description.
Yes.
So I would like to suggest that we include John W. Bate Middle School as the name for the middle school.
Yes.
That's been pretty important to this district, and I feel like it's important to include that going forward.
Is that the middle initial? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, and there's no John, so it would say John W. Bate Middle School.
I'll email it to you.
Got it. I will do that.
Yeah, Elmer can have his meeting, email it to you. Thank you.
No problem. I should have been a little more thoughtful about that. I looked at all of them and I was trying to think, okay, where do I save space for two?
Yeah.
But that makes total sense. I think it's a local issue and definitely, you're right about that, and I appreciate that feedback.
Yeah.
Wait, any?
No, looks good.
Okay. Owens, it looks like everything looks great. We'll just get the change made to John W. Bate.
Good.
And I think the schedule's very doable, and I think the board realizes that we do have flexibility. Something could come up.
I'm just reading that when she said that. Does it make sense then to to do them all the same?
Oh, with the middle and
I mean, if they're all listed that way, we should list them that way. It should be Edna L, and I think there's a G, right?
Yeah.
And Mary.
Yeah.
So,
And we can send those to you, Owens. Okay?
I will make those amendments immediately.
Okay.
So I did want to just speak about the posting language. You kind of moved in that direction. Thank you. You've helped amend it a bit. Is there anything else on that job description that you'd like to see me change? And does it meet your satisfaction?
I think it looks good. There's an extra word in the first paragraph, the last sentence, to bring people together to serve the Danville's children and families. So it would either be the Danville Schools, Children's and Families, or get rid of the.
I was trying to figure out how to fit that because it is Danville Children and Families, and but I think I need to switch that sentence a little bit and get the families and children, the children and families of Danville schools will be a better fit.
That's good.
Yeah, it worked.
Great.
That's great.
Anything else on that?
No, I think the board's really good on it right now, so
Okay.
we'll move forward with that.
We have a thumbs up for me to post with that, with those changes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
I need to ask for a district contact. I need someone that I can contact at the district who would help me with communications and just some general structural things. And it's likely that you'll need to have someone there for the screening committee to be able to connect to as they start to form up.
Well, Owens,
Do you have someone in mind?
yeah, we're in a real fortunate and unfortunate, but Dr. Thomas is our interim, and so I feel very comfortable that I'm going to ask the board that he could be the contact person, because he doesn't have anything directly involved.
I agree.
And he can also get you to the resources that you're going to need, and
Right.
so forth. So, Dr. Thomas, is that,
I'm happy to serve in the way the board sees fit for me to serve.
everybody comfortable with that?
Yes.
what's wrong with that?
Yes.
All right.
Wonderful, thank you. Then you and I will be connected. You'll probably be sending some of this stuff down the line, but I'll reach out to you as we go. The next one is about public information. You have someone there that's a public information contact, maybe that'll be directed to Elmer as well, who would then forward it out. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The media person.
Okay, because what we'll do pretty quickly, folks are gonna wanna know what the status is, so we'll put together a story here pretty quick at KSA. We'll get it out and get it to, over to you, probably to the advocate or whoever you would recommend to get that out to. We'll get it up on our KSA news brief and it'll start splashing out there pretty quick.
Owens, I do want to say that we are in search of, we actually developed a recruiting video that talked a lot about Danville. We used it at some of our recruiting fairs. So is it possible that we could put a link onto the job description with that?
I think, yes, that's fantastic, yes.
Okay.
Give me that link, I'll make sure it goes up there, that's fantastic.
And I'm going to reach out to the Chamber of Commerce and see if they have anything available that could be used also.
All right, that's terrific, thank you. Just a little bit about the services now, the service level. Essentially, the difference in the service level that you've chosen and the upper sessions are, it's a virtual. What we're doing is we'll be working virtual with you. And you will be forming the screening committee locally, and I will step in with them when we get to that first meeting. So I just want to make sure that everybody was aware of that. Any changes or any additions to things you want to do as we go along, we can work with those. For example, as we get into it, and if you think you want to do a virtual showcase, we can do that. We can work on the criteria questions if you want. I'll work with you any way you see fit. So don't feel like anything's locked in at this point other than we're working for you, and we know you want to start with that bronze level service, and that's what we'll do.
Well, and Owens, I'm glad you brought that up because it could be down the line that there might be some other opportunities to use. And so we would like for that option to be open.
You will have that option. Okay. I will tell you, we're locked only in the fact that we're working with you. And if you want to amend it, we will amend it. Okay. And so finally, any other questions or directions that you have for me as we begin this work?
No, just thank you.
Okay, I think we're all ready.
Good.
It's a daunting task. I've been through this before. It really is more a pleasurable experience because you're doing something for the district and our kids. And that's what we have to keep foremost in front of our thoughts on what is the main criteria. And that truly is the main criteria is who's going to lead our district that will serve our kids in the best way possible. So
I will tell you that I've had wonderful experiences doing this work, and mainly because it allows the district to rediscover those things that are wonderful about it that get lost in the day-to-day operations. Because you really do, folks are looking at why is Danville Independent Schools so good? What is it we like? And you bring those things up. Everybody will say, well, we like to work on this, we like to work on that. But at its core, you get a chance to look at those things that make it a wonderful place. And there are people who want to come to you and want to be your superintendent because of the things that you offer. So I want you to know with phone number, emails, things of that nature so we can stay connected. And if there's anything that I can do along the way to help you, please let me know. And I'm looking forward to getting this journey started. So thank you all so much.
all right, Owens, thank you. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir.
All right. I think we're off to a good start. And, it's going to be exciting and busy at the same time. So let's move down to reports. Personnel report. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at that? If you have any questions or issues, get with the superintendent and he'll fill you in what he can. All right. Kim, are you ready for the
Yes, sir.
financial statements?
Good evening. I hope you all had the opportunity to look at the attachments. I did attach the October 2021 financial statement, and if you look at the total receipts, they're pretty much in comparison to last year. We did have some of those extra funds that have been coming in along the month. And then the total disbursements are relatively about the same. Of course, we've been spending some of those additional fundings that we have received this year. And if you have any questions regarding the statement, I can maybe help answer that this time.
Does anybody have any questions or concerns? Okay. All right, are we gonna do motions on these separately, or are we just gonna combine them, because they were listed under one?
That's the financial report that needs a motion and acceptance.
Okay. So on the financial report,
I'd like to offer a motion that we accept the finance report as submitted.
Second.
so we have a motion and a second to accept the financial report as submitted. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing there are none, the motion carries.
I just would like to mention, I did upload an extra report,
Mhm.
and so I hope you've all had a chance to look at that, and my apologies, it was late in the day when I did do that. So, this shows our total expenditures to the end of October and the original allocations. So they're similar to what Ms. Satterley sent out last night.
Right. And thank you for doing that,
You're
because
welcome.
that'll help us keep track. Definitely.
So, the next item I'd like to mention is the vendor invoices. That was also an attachment, and there's a few things that I would like to mention regarding the vendor invoices. You can see BMS was a vendor, and that was for the new security camera, or I'm sorry, Alliant was the vendor, and it was for new security cameras at Bates Middle School. So that job is completed, and there's some more. The ViewSonic board that I think was mentioned earlier by our teacher has been invoiced and paid for. And then we also have Foreign Press, the success criteria, Ms. Satterley and some of her colleagues had requested paid for. And the HVAC panel, that has been completed at the high school, and that was so our maintenance men would not have to go up on top of the roof to do the manual off and on. They could do it locally. So do you have any questions about the vendors that I can help with explanations?
I don't see anything. Anybody else have anything?
No.
No, but I do have a question though about, I know that we had, we were in the works of some, work being done at Baked
Yes, sir.
and on the roof, because we had, new panels working, or old panels working with new equipment and so forth. Where are we with that process?
Well, that is something that we have been looking at. Mr. Dunn and I have been discussing some ways to determine funding and creating the actual building project through FATPAC. So we're working on that along with Dr. Thomas to get that underway.
So one thing I think that the board will see is it's the goal in December to bring a BG1 in front of you that would help really move ahead the HVAC project at both the middle school and the high school. And we're just trying to work out the details of the funding because that has to be put on the BG1 before you all receive it. And so once we have those details worked out, it's anticipated that December 13th we would have a BG1 in front of the board.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, are there any other questions or concerns?
No.
Okay, seeing there are none, we need a motion, please.
I'd like to offer a motion for approval of the finance report of payments of invoices.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second for the approval of the payment of invoices as presented. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing there are none opposed, motion carries. Thank you all.
Now, I do have one more thing that I would like to mention.
Okay.
Obviously, we're in the high point of our tax collection. So at the end of October, we had collected 19% of our revenue. And that is 16% of the total bills. So as of today, we have collected 37% of our total revenues expected, which is 35% of our total bills. So you can see that we're moving right along and we have a steady flow of customers and coming in.
Well, it's fantastic, and that is, most of them know me that I've been on the board. That's always a big deal that I ask about is our tax collections. And so they are going fantastically.
Yes, they are.
So we just talked to somebody, had a big smile on their face, they said, I paid my taxes. I
Yes.
said, okay. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
That's a great point.
All right, so we need to go to item number 6, which is the approval of previous minutes. Need a motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of October 18, 2021 and November 8, 2021.
Second.
So we have a motion acceptance for the approval of the October 18th and November 8th meeting minutes as submitted. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing there are none, the motion carries. Thank you all. Okay, the board member certification, I think we all have signed these. This is basically just normal homework we do through the year, and to make sure we don't have a conflict of interest, either directly or indirectly, in doing business with the district. So we will have these for you tonight.
I'm saying to scandals to our auditor tonight.
Exactly. So, do we need to make a motion on that?
Yes, sir.
I didn't think so. Okay. All right, let's move down to the second reading of board policy 8.1131. And Dr. Thomas, if I'm correct on this, is just basically cleaning up the policy that said that about the Commonwealth diploma.
You are correct.
So everybody's had a chance to read this? Okay, so we need a motion, please.
I'd like to offer a motion for the approval of the board policy 08.1131. Approved as the second reading.
Okay. And we have a second. All those in favor of the motion for the approval of the second reading of policy 081131, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing there are none, the motion carries. Thank you all. Okay, let's go down to item number 9, which we actually posted last week on the meeting, work session, and so it's concerning our district board meeting calendar. So if y'all had a chance to peruse that again, do anybody see any need to make any changes at this point? Okay. Okay, so if we can get a motion on that, please.
I make a motion that we accept the board meeting calendar as presented.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to accept the board meeting calendar for next year, 2022, as presented. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Do you mind if I jump in and say that both Olivia and Brian are working, they have this ready to be posted now on the website in a very parent-friendly and community-friendly way, so.
Excellent. Thank you all.
So you won't have to tweak it any.
No changes. All right, let's go down to, and I'm gonna turn this over to Dr. Thomas, Kentucky Utilities Contractor Lighting.
So, with our contract, we do think there's a little, it looks like it's flipped. So basically, this is the service to put the LED outdoor lighting in. And we're recommending that we take the lower amount. We do think that as an accident, the lower amount that we are recommending is the amount of $28,855.92. For the LED lighting, we believe that wattage is going to be very adequate. That's going to, it's going to be more than adequate, a lot better than what we have right now. And, but I do believe that the two forms that you have are actually flipped. So we're recommending the lower wattage and the lower amount as we switch out to LED lighting.
What's the, may I ask the difference?
So the difference is on the wattage. I think and we do have Ernest here. Ernest, I think we're talking about the difference of
between the 400 and
400 watt
1,000 watt
1,000 watt
would be like lit up like Commonwealth Stadium. So it'd be.
I like that. I like that analogy, that example.
That's a lot of light, and for the amount of area that we're going to be lighting, it will distract the neighbors because they'll think it's daytime at night. Mm-hmm. It's going to be so bright. Mm-hmm. So the 400 watt bulb would be
400 is going to be that
very adequate, and it's going to be a lot brighter than what we've got now.
Awesome.
Okay. Everybody good on that?
Yes.
I'd like to offer, does that, we need a motion?
Yes, we do.
I'd like to offer a motion that we take the superintendent's recommendation and approve the contract of the $28,855.92.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second to accept the KU contract for the $28,855.92, I believe,
Yep.
for lighting, outdoor lighting. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing there are none, the motion carries. Thank you all. Okay. Let's see here. The next item we have will be our consent agenda, and we don't need any discussion on it. So I'd like to have a motion, please.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second for the approval of all consent items as presented. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing there are none, the motion carries. Thank you all. And we don't have, I didn't even ask, but we have no one for public, reserved for the public. Okay, I don't think we do. All right, and so item 13, we need a motion to adjourn.
Well, I'd like to offer that motion.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to adjourn gleefully. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing there are not any opposition, motion carries. Thank you all. What a great meeting.